name is Paula Dappin, and I represent VACO and the BioVision Foundation for Ecological Development in the NGO CSW Geneva. I joined the NGO CSW Geneva nearly 25 years ago, so I've been present for half of the committee's history. One of my favorite accomplishments of the committee is one that proves that a small group of strong, engaged women can change a record of history that is flawed. And that is the story of our task force celebrating Eleanor Roosevelt and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It began in 2007 when a Paris-based foundation had a plaque mounted on the outside the gates of the United Nations to honor the Frenchman René Cassin, claiming that he was the architect of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He was, in fact, only one of an international drafting committee who contributed to the Universal Declaration under the inspired leadership of the woman, Eleanor Roosevelt. Our member Ann Hurt was incensed by this hijacking of Eleanor Roosevelt's legacy and the misrepresentation of how the Declaration came about. So Ann started and led a small task force of our members to celebrate Eleanor Roosevelt as well as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, with the very ambitious goal of having another plaque erected outside the UN to recognize Eleanor as the driving force behind the Declaration. It was Eleanor Roosevelt who, as chair of the Commission on Human Rights, surmounted Cold War antagonisms, cultural roadblocks, and honest differences to direct the creation of a universal document that she steered through the various UN bodies to its adoption on December 10, 1948. As a result of the work of our task force, in 2008, on the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a 5-foot-high plaque picturing Eleanor Roosevelt reading the Declaration, with also the names and nationalities of the drafting committee members, was unveiled in a ceremony by then Swiss Federal Councilor Micheline Calmy-Rey and our own Ann Hurt. The plaque occupies a prime spot facing the main gate of the UN in Geneva. I think this past accomplishment has had a lasting impact. The memorial is a reminder of the woman who is responsible for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and also its purpose, to inspire each of us to work so that all people have a right to freedom, equality, and dignity. This year, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights celebrates its 75th anniversary. In these turbulent times, the plaque reminds us of our individual responsibility as perfectly stated by Eleanor Roosevelt. Where, after all, do universal rights begin? In small places close to home. Without concerned citizen action to uphold them, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. Thank you.
My name is Brigitte Polanovsky. I represent the International Council of Women at the United Nations Geneva since more than 30 years with other colleagues, especially my beloved Janine de Bocard, who belonged to the committee since the beginning. And of course, I belong to the NGO committee since then. I represent also, since 2 years, Regard de Femmes, and I am an expert on violence against women and girls. I have had the pleasure and responsibility to be vice president when Conchita Poncini was president, and I have loved to work for the committee with her, writing statements, lobbying for the rights of women and girls. In 2007, with a working group on the girl child that I had the task of president, we produced a study and a booklet on the girl's right to live, female feticide and girl infanticide. At that time, nobody was interested to study the fact that more than 100 million of girls were missing in Asia, especially in India and China. Boys' preference and other causes were the reason. With a working group on violence against women, and my colleague and friend Bahanira's work, we also published a glossary of violence against women to share understanding of terminology. The terminology has an important effect on issues and their comprehensions. Those study and publication have had a large impact in all our work with the United Nations. The question of girls' infanticide has been put on the agenda of governments since then, and I have been asked by some governments to help on this issue. This is an ongoing process, and I hope really that the committee will continue this work with the United Nations.
This is Afton Butler-Reed speaking on behalf of the Health and Women's Health Committee. I'm delighted to be here representing the Mother's Legacy Project and as the director of the Global Education Project for university students who regularly come to Geneva. The Women and Health Committee was in existence when I came to Geneva under the leadership of Renata Bloom. It was a very vital committee, and it's been vital ever since, and primarily because the resources in Geneva are so plentiful. There's not only the WHO, but there's all the main international organizations that oftentimes have links to health issues. What we did as an organization is to sponsor many events, particularly side events that featured these specialists in the various medical health fields. And as a result, it not only educated the audience, but created awareness about health issues. It demonstrated how diseases happen, like when HIV/AIDS appeared, we transmitted information about the cause, how to prevent this disease, and the treatment. We encourage members to report on any information or meetings that they would go to, so that all of us became aware of so many medical issues that were happening in Geneva. The achievement is we saw a rise in the enrollment of women in these fields of science, medicine, and technology, and education. We brought young people to Geneva to participate in forums and made these resources available to them and created mentors for them. These mentors were vital in the progress of their education, and when they left, so many of them achieved things by graduating from their university in sexual and reproductive rights. They also found that they were most interested in partnerships. Some of them went into financing the future. And the thing what was very exciting during the Human Rights Council was the advocacy that we really did on maternal health. It resulted in 3 resolutions passing. It was quite a victory. And this victory we see today in many of our NGO organizations going out and making a difference in saving the lives of women when they are at a very remote location and making a difference in the life and well-being of their offspring. Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure to be part of the CSW all these years, and being part of this has made a difference in the future of women everywhere.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I think I owe a lot to the NGO CSW for the work that I have accomplished in collaboration with many others, of course. I joined the NGO CSW in the early 80s as a representative of UFAIR, United for Equity and Ending Racism. That gave me the opportunity to come up with the issue of harmful traditional practices affecting the health of women and children, like female genital mutilation, early marriage, and which was a taboo subject at the time. No government wanted to talk about it. And not many NGOs did. But when I joined the NGO CSW, I had more platform and I could go to the UN, speak out loud. We really did a lot in order to bring up an issue that was a taboo. And this was thanks to the NGO CSW. And also it gave me the opportunity to travel to Africa, meet some of the victims, as well as the decision makers. They listened more to me because of my association with the NGO CSW. I come back from my travel. I reported to the NGO CSW meeting, and they say, well done. You can do this. We shared ideas. They encouraged me. And then at the United Nations, we lobbied together. You know what happened? Our success was 2 special experts were appointed by the Subcommission on Human Rights to look into the issue of harmful traditional practices. And when the special rapporteurs were appointed, we worked with these 2 special rapporteurs. That was a big entry point for us to the Human Rights Commission. And thanks to that work we did together, seminars were held following a resolution by the Subcommission and the Commission, one in Africa, another one in Asia, Sri Lanka. And the issue was discussed there. And the report from the seminar was reported back to the Subcommission and the Commission. So that way, we started raising up the issue. That is because of the support I received. Finally, I and my other colleagues were able to establish the committee, Inter-African Committee on Traditional Practice. We work with immigrants, African immigrants in Europe. We work with NGOs in Asia for other harmful traditional practices, such as early marriage and so on. So it expanded and it became really a major issue, one of the major issues for the Commission and later on for the Council on Human Rights. And guess what? Finally, I received a UN award, Population UN Award, for the work that we have done. This was because of the support that I received from the NGO CSW. Thanks to them now, because of the work we did together, this issue has become an issue of UNICEF, WHO, many other UN agencies. Even the General Assembly has passed a resolution to end. Governments in Africa have adopted laws prohibiting FGM. And this is really a great achievement of the NGO CSW. Thanks to them, they gave me the platform, but we really work together.
Edith Valentine. It was a kind of a loose committee at the time. I started to work for WILF in 1969, and I think I almost immediately did some work with the Committee on the Status of Women, which was then not a committee, but a working group, part of the Human Rights Committee. Well, I think it is a fact that many of the NGO representatives in Geneva were women, and of different organizations, partly because a lot of the work was voluntary. Women were always better, faster at providing voluntary assistance and efforts than men were. Just a socialization of sorts. So the women were very often got together to talk about issues of equality, being in, sitting in UN forums and listening and being so painfully aware of the inequality. I don't know, it's basically really not all that long ago when there were no officials in the UN above a certain grade. I think Helvi Sipilä was the first breakthrough that actually was a political appointment. So the women automatically got together and discussed a lot of the issues, always also from a women's perspective. And they brought that into the NGO Human Rights Committee, for example. And bit by bit, the women's issue became an important issue in the NGO community to be taken up. And even the Human Rights Committee began to be more interested in the issue of equality. And it really I am convinced it was the pressure really from the people, from the NGO community, that brought about the change in the UN, and the pressure to finally declare a day, a year, and then a decade, and many really significant changes have taken place. Not enough, and they're fragile. You know, they make progress, and then suddenly issues become lost again. And but in the early days, then there was a lot of how should I say, very informal work being done, and many informal discussions that were sort of feeding into the work of committees, and and I think this is why eventually the Committee on the Status of Women was formed and became an independent committee to be, you know, to really show that it can be something of its own.